So today I want to talk to you a little bit about cooling systems and some of the tests that you're going to be performing most commonly in the shop. One of the first inspections you want to do, of course, is to get the vehicle in the air. Once you have the vehicle in the air, you want to look it over and do a good multi-point inspection and annotate any leaks that you might find underneath the vehicle, especially pertaining to coolant in this instance. Okay? If you see any coolant leaks underneath the vehicle, what you're going to want to do is try and trace those leaks up as high as you can. But a lot of times you're not going to be able to find out exactly where it is that you have a leak from in the vehicle. Okay, so what we're going to need to do is what we call a coolant pressure test. Now, one of the first things you want to do for a coolant pressure test is take a look at your cap. All right, you want to note the amount of PSI that it takes for the cap to release pressure in the system. That'll be your max system pressure. After you have noted your system pressure, you want to go ahead and remove the cap. Okay? One of the few things that a lot of people skip in this step is you need to actually check that cap and make sure that it releases pressure at the correct PSI. If it's releasing pressure too soon or too late, damage to the system can occur. What I have here is another pressure tester with a cap adapter that we do have available for the old style Ford cap. Similar to your cooling system, you're going to attach the adapter to the pressure tester and release the valve. Same as you would with any other adapter. You will then screw on the cap until you hear the click noise if it is the type that clicks. Now you have your setup ready to pressure test the cap. And what you want to do is go ahead and look at that PSI again on your cap. For this cap, it's going to be 16 PSI. So what we want to see is we're going to pump up our gauge, and as we pump up our gauge, we want to see it reach about 16 PSI, and then anytime we try and go higher than that, it will release pressure back to 16 PSI. Let's see what happens. This is an indication of a good cap. If you had a cap that released pressure too soon or too late, you would want to replace that cap with a new cap and then retest the system for proper operation. Once you have pressure tested your cap, it's time to pressure test the cooling system. What you're going to need is a cooling system pressure tester kit like the kit we have here. This kit is a master kit from Cornwell and is offered, kits just like it are offered from Cornwell, Snap-on, Matco, all different brands have their coolant pressure test kits. Being that you work at a Ford dealership, it may or may not behoove you to buy a master kit. However, as a technician, you know that you work on more than just Fords outside of the dealership sometimes, so it could be a very good thing to have a master kit. However, working in the Ford dealership, you would at minimum want to get a basic kit and then buy the adapters that are specific to Ford vehicles. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is select the correct adapter for the vehicle. I've already looked this one up and I know which adapter I need for this vehicle. So you're going to take the adapter and you're going to screw it on to the top of the degas bottle or radiator, depending on which kind of vehicle you're working on. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to attach your pressure test pump. You do this by simply taking the two locking tabs, putting them down around the adapter, and twisting until it turns no farther clockwise. At that point in time, you release the lever that puts spring pressure down on that adapter and holds the pressure tester in place. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and pump up the system to that max pressure that was listed on your cap. In this case, 21 PSI. Once you have reached 21 psi, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and make sure that you don't relieve any pressure off the cap by twisting the hose, because that can happen. And you're going to go ahead and place your pressure tester in a good location that is not going to get knocked over, and you want to wait about 15 minutes. And what you're going to do is you're going to monitor that system and see if you have any leaks. If the system shows leaks, it will start to show a loss of pressure in the system on your gauge. Places that could have leaks are externally or internally to the engine. What you would want to do at this point is you want to go ahead and raise the vehicle up and look back over it and see if you can visually see any leaks coming from anywhere on the vehicle. If you're losing pressure and you have an external leak, this is the best way to find it. If you had noted in your multi-point inspection any leaks that looked like they could have been coming from the cooling system, you would want to start there for your initial diagnosis. However, you want to do a good look over on the entire engine and cooling system. Looking especially at the radiator, hoses, and where the hose is attached to the engine. The other place that you could have leaks is internally of the engine. If you do not note any external leaks, but you are losing system pressure over time, you will need to then go ahead and do a little further digging into the engine to see if you can find the source of the leak. Common sources of internal engine leaks are head gaskets, and a head gasket could show coolant in the cylinder, where you would need to remove the spark plugs and then check down each cylinder with a bore scope and see if you can find any coolant in the cylinders. If you find coolant in the cylinders, you will need to proceed with engine tear down at that point to correct the issue. Engine coolant in the cylinder could also possibly be from a cracked head, and that is something you would also want to look at if you were inside the engine. Okay, if it was cracked around a valve, because remember we have to cool those valves, and so there's coolant running around the combustion chamber and the valve area, then you would find that by either magnafluxing on an iron core or sending out to a machine shop for x-ray. One of the other indications that could also show that it is a cracked head is if you do not find any issues with a head gasket. Cracked heads could also show up in the engine oil. If you have a cracked head that has a coolant jacket leaking into the engine, you could end up with coolant in the engine oil. This could also happen if you had a cracked block. So you'll want to check your engine oil and see if it is milky. If your engine oil is milky in color, then there's a good chance that you have coolant coming into the engine somewhere between in the block or in the head, creating that milky substance that is a mixture of moisture from the coolant and the oil. This is usually an indicator that you will need an engine. So as I'm sitting here editing this video, I realized that I left out one very important point. When you have coolant getting into your engine oil, a lot of times that can also be, or possibly be, a bad oil cooler if there is an oil cooler on the engine. So you will want to test the oil cooler to see if that is the source of contamination. However, most of the time when you get water intrusion into an engine oil system, you're going to be replacing everything anyways because the bearings are going to be wiped out. However, if it was something that happened with not a lot of time between when it happened and when it got to the shop, you could possibly save that engine. However, most likely you're going to be replacing the engine due to damage to the bearings.